Welcome back to another Shark Show. Today we're going to talk about ESDs, which is the Emergency Service District. And it kind of got brought up last week, I think it is. Mm-hmm. And the meeting, Nate, it was kind of interesting how that kind of formed, wasn't it?
Yeah, you know, they really didn't start this off on the right foot. The Commissioners Court held a workshop, right? And they posted on the bulletin board outside, hey, you know, we're going to have this workshop on this date, which is fine. They're supposed to do that statutorily. What they didn't do on February the 8th, between then and the day they held the meeting, was let the community know. They didn't post it online. They didn't post it anywhere. They brought in their hotshot attorney from Austin. There was problems during the live stream, and then going back and watching the video on YouTube, that attorney is sitting there facing, he's not speaking into the microphone. He was facing the audience the whole time. So in effect, the people weren't notified, and then you can't really hear what he's saying throughout most of that meeting.
Right, and that's what we want. We've talked a little bit about ESDs to begin with, and it needs to be brought to the people for workshops.
Right.
So this is where the citizens have to come in because, you know, we have a petition here from the De Cordova, Acton area fire department for an ESD. And, you know, first of all, you have to say, why are they even doing this? Why are they petitioning the people? They have the petition. They brought it through the Commissioner Court the first time, and the petition was denied because of the signatures.
Yeah, they didn't have enough valid signatures on
Right.
it.
So they did it again. Everything was checked through the elections administrator and the county judge's office this time the correct way. And now we're in a position where they have to have public meetings and hearings and workshops on whether we want an emergency services district. And this is where we're at, and the judge's office and the judge kind of blew the first meeting.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the citizens are the ones that this is going to affect. The citizens are the ones that will be having to pay the extra taxes for this. So of all the people that should be informed about this, the citizens matter the most here.
And if you look at the boundaries, you know, I said earlier, looking at the De Cordova, Acton area, and that is just one volunteer fire department out of 9. So, you know, we heard Toller might be doing another petition, so that might be 2. But we could eventually have 9 ESDs if this all comes to a head. And as we look at ESDs, you know, you have to question as a citizen, why? You know, why at this point does somebody need an ESD? And how did we get to this point? What is wrong with the county? Are they not funding all the fire or volunteer fire departments properly?
I would argue that they are not doing that right now, and I think it is important that as we continue to grow, we see the funding dedicated to fire protection increase, and that funding for these 9 different service districts has been stagnant for years.
Yeah, you bring up a great point because we are growing. I mean, everyone in Granbury can see all the new housing going up and the infrastructure issues that we're having because of it that we need to deal with. I mean, your fire department, that's a basic necessity that we need to make sure is taken care of for our county.
That's the core function of government, which we talk about, right?
Right.
Not necessarily a $200,000, you know, RV, but a core function of government.
Right.
And you have to kind of balance out, do we need an ESD or should the county come about and say, we're going to take charge of this? You know, we talk about what the county spends and how much they spend and, you know, who's attuned to all this. And right now it appears that maybe the fire chiefs go through the fire marshal. And if that's the case, then we must have a bottleneck. I think the fire chiefs need to go through each commissioner in their precinct.
Yeah, it seems like a great idea. I mean, that's who they should be going to. That's who's going to ultimately be able to bring it before the court if there's an issue or something that needs to be addressed, such as funding.
Right. And if you look back at July 14th of 2020 at the Commissioner's Court, the fire departments were in need of air packs. And the county wasn't funding properly what they needed. So, yeah, I could see the fire chiefs and the, you know, volunteer firefighters saying, yeah, we can't get this basic need, and our fire packs are 15 years old. And now we're taking from money because nobody went to schools for COVID or training. So we're kind of robbing $84,000 from all these budgets. And I believe there was 30-something line item transfers to get this $84,000 for 15 air packs. And then they took another $84,000 from capital expenses. So you have $168,000 for air packs that hey, somebody should have been paying attention when these things were needed.
Yeah, and like you've said, this is a core function of government. I think we're all as conservative as it gets, but our fire departments need to be funded in a way that the taxpayers have total accountability.
And accountability, that's a great point that you bring up, because we got to make sure the accountability remains.
So as we look at, I think when the citizens go to these meetings and go to these workshops, I think a lot of questions that need to be asked is, are they properly funded? Why are they going out to look for ESDs? And what is the budget right now?
Talking with a couple of these fire chiefs, it seems like the average budget for these guys is right around $100,000, give or take. But if we form an ESD and they get a 10-cent tax, right? The county has about a 40% tax. They would get a 10-cent tax. That's effectively raising the county taxes on everybody by 25%. And then on top of that, the people that are in charge of spending and overseeing that 10-cent tax, they're all appointed officials. It could turn into a bureaucratic nightmare for the people here.
Yeah, you look at 9 ESDs, if it comes to that,
Yeah.
That's 45 people that are appointed as commissioners to the ESD that the commissioner's court appoints.
Right.
And we've already run into problems with the commissioner court appointing certain individuals. Like, we've talked about the auditor. We've talked about the elections administrator. Now we have some great people that work. We've got Melissa in HR. We have Jay Riley. We have Clint Head. We've got a lot of good people that work for the county. But they're just like everything. Out of 45, you're going to expect some that you're not going to get that's going to be for the taxpayer.
Yeah, and they would just, continue to spend that money in a way that maybe isn't in the taxpayer's best interest.
And then who's going to be accountable? And you're looking, depending on the population, because this all goes off of ad valorem taxes, right?
Yeah.
Real property and personal property. We could be looking at $800,000 for one district up to $1.2 million.
Times 9 different districts, that is raising the amount of money that your county is bringing in tremendously.
Let's look at these workshops we're going to have and look at the commissioners and say, hey, knuckle down, bear down on this, do your homework, and let's come up with a plan. Let's get these fire chiefs of these 9 departments with a budget over the last 3 years on what they've spent it on, what their 1, 3, 5 year plans are, and how much that's going to cost. Personally, as a taxpayer, I want to know that my commissioner and my county judge, they're responsible for this, so we have an elected official that better be on the ball, not 45 unelected people.
Right, and an elected official who will be accountable to the taxpayers, because the other alternative is you lose that accountability.
If you look at the fire protection budget in the 2020-21 budget for Hood County, the county pays for the fuel for these volunteer fire departments. They pay for the insurance. They pay for some maintenance, some radio maintenance. So there are some things they pay for. What happens if there's an ESD? Do they not get county money anymore? What happens to the equipment that they already have at their fire station? So there's a lot of questions that the citizens need to ask their commissioners, who should be on this 100%. Mm-hmm. Nate, you mentioned earlier about, looking like a 25% tax. Well, some of the powers that, come along with an ESD, they can do bonds and loans, borrow money. They also have police powers. So they have the same that a fire marshal would have as far as fees and fines and things like that. For some of the solutions that we could look at for these work group meetings is, places in the budget that we can find some money to help the budget out. And, we've done some research. And Nate, what about that sales tax?
Yeah, so Mike, the last about 5 years or so, the anticipated sales tax revenue, which comes from the county auditor Becky Kidd, has been stuck at about $3.9 million. Now, every year, that's about $1 million or more shy of what we actually bring in. Now, given that we give all the volunteer fire departments total about $500,000 a year, what that tells me is that we could take that $500,000 that's currently in the budget, add that $1 million that Becky is undercutting on the anticipated sales tax revenue, and triple the volunteer fire department's budget just like that. The money is there.
Yeah, it's a curious thing that the sales tax revenue stayed kind of where it's at for the last 5 years, yet we've seen this huge explosion in population growth. Clearly more people are living here. Clearly more people are spending money here. So why that discrepancy?
I think that goes back to, the county auditor being better at her job. If she were better at her job, maybe she would be able to anticipate the sales tax revenue a little closer, being, 20 to 25% off every year. It doesn't make for a good accounting practice, and it also creates essentially what has been used the last few years as a slush fund.
Well, and you kind of bring that slush fund up. The city actually does a good job of estimating the sales tax. I'll give them credit for that. But if you estimate for 5 years in a row at 3.9 and then beyond that, maybe 3.6, I think we looked at, there's a problem. But what that money is used for is to pay off debt. So in effect, what they're using that money for is they're taking it from the citizens and the regular operating budget and your ad valorem taxes and using it to pay off debt. Now, if the citizens, want a bond, they vote for a bond, that's great. I'm all for paying off debt. But if we're kind of playing the system, in the budget to do that, that's wrong.
Right.
So, it's not up to Becky to say, hey, let's do this with a bond, because she's not the populace of Hood County. And, what we do with this, money we can find in the budget, and, we can go through there and just pick out stuff in the budget left and right. We talked about waste, fraud, and abuse before. And this is just, a typical item in here that you can look at that would help the volunteer fire departments.
Yeah.
So, get those budgets together, fire chiefs, and let's see what we can do with the commissioner's court. And that would help for the solutions that you need, because I hear things like, we need faster response time. I agree. The best response time possible.
Obviously, yeah.
We also need life-saving equipment, protection, both for the citizens and the firefighters.
Yeah.
So, where are we at on that? Is everybody's equipment up to date? Do we have enough for the volunteers? If we don't, somebody's fallen short on their job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and hopefully they bring that information, like you said, to these workshops so we can see where the issues are and how we can go about fixing those. Whether that's through voting with this ESD or not, I mean, if there's another solution or an alternative, then we need to look at all those avenues.
Yeah, and then you can get into training and replacing old equipment, but if you don't have a plan and you don't bring it to the commissioner's court and actually your commissioners, or there's a bottleneck at the fire marshal's office, then we have issues, and I can understand why people get frustrated.
Right.
But let's look, before we spend, maybe 8 to 12 million across the whole county on 9 ESDs and 45 unelected bureaucrats, let's look at solving the problem with the 5 elected officials we have on the court right now.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
It sure does.
And, as I live in this ESD district they're proposing, and, these workshops we need to have so that the citizens that are within the ESD can go and look at what the possible solutions are. If the ESD is really needed, we need to know where the issues are so we can see if there are alternatives to solving those problems besides going into an ESD and potentially having, appointed bureaucrats managing our money instead of our elected officials, where we can hold them accountable.
All right, so I live in that district, right, the proposed emergency services district, and I personally support firefighters 100%. These volunteer guys, they love what they do. I see them, flying down the road with the lights on that they rig up on their truck, trying to get out there and do what they love to do, which is run into burning buildings. I commend them 100%, and I think that our county needs to be the ones to step up to the plate and get them funded and make sure that they have what they need to succeed.
Absolutely. I'm all about making sure our firefighters have what they need. We support them 100%. So finding and getting to the root cause of where the issue is top priority. Definitely want to make sure they have what they need.
With that being said, right now their budget is at about $100,000 a year, give or take, depending on donations. And the county gives them about 50. De Cordova gives them about 30, and they get donations on top of that. What is it that they're lacking to take that $100,000 a year budget up to $1 million a year budget? Let's hear those 1 year, 5 year, 3 year, 10-year plans. Present those to the commissioner's court, and let's try to make the counties step up the way they should be.
And I agree, Nate, Courtney, with what you said. Volunteer fire department, first responders, EMS, they all have a heart for what they do. I mean, it's in them, it's inside of them, it's part of what they do, and I commend them, 100%. And as a taxpayer, I want that core function of government to be funded properly, and I want the people that are funding it, the citizens, to have an outlet to their elected officials to say, you're doing it wrong or you're doing it right. Thank you or no thank you. And I think we're kind of at the point here in Hood County that, it's time to step up, get those proposals in, get those budgets in. Let's see where we're at regionally, and maybe we can come together and buy the right equipment, do the right training, and get this solved.
Guys, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate all the support, whether that means buying merchandise like these hats, the tumblers you see, and these t-shirts. Also, if you would, like, share, subscribe, feel free to chime in the comment section. That stuff helps us beat that Facebook algorithm, and what we're up against there. We appreciate all your support.
And once again, thank you for tuning in. Blue Shark's here to show the light on your elected officials. We're also here for truth and accountability, and I think this episode shows that we really want to get things done the right way. We care about our firefighters and our EMS and all our first responder personnel. Let's get them equipped and get it done the right way this time. Shark Show out.